This paternalistic and colonial view that it knows what's best for First Nations children has echoes of the past injustices.
Tonight, talk about reconciliation has not stopped Canada from fighting human rights orders to provide better health care for First Nations kids.
Many of our students are parents, many of our students work, and so they have a lot on their plate.
Through thick and thin, nothing will stand between these students and their high school graduation.
Did a lot of hard work to get it completed, and it went, let's say it went pretty well.
And the paintings on the wall for these young Yukon artists trying to do something for their spiritual well-being. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. We begin in Ottawa, where Canada continues its bid to quash two human rights tribunal orders over Jordan's principal and First Nations child welfare. It was the second day of virtual court, and advocacy organizations had their say on the issue of compensation. Brett Forster is in Ottawa with that story.
Once again, the Spirit Bear found himself in federal court opposing the Canadian government on behalf of First Nations kids. The teddy bear joined Sarah Clark, a lawyer for the First Nations Child and Family Caring Society, who urged a judge to reject Canada's appeals, calling them a shameful 11th-hour attempt to save money.
This paternalistic and colonial view that it knows what's best for First Nations children has echoes of the past injustices. And so at this point, we say Canada should not be trusted.
In 2019, the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal ordered Canada to compensate kids who were unnecessarily removed from their homes and placed in foster care or denied essential services under Jordan's principle. Yesterday, Justice Canada lawyer Robert Frater told the court this order was irrational and deeply problematic. He said the tribunal awarded a class action settlement without a lead plaintiff or sufficient evidence of harm.
There was no evidence to support this massive compensation order. The tribunal's reasons attempt to conceal this basic problem by repeatedly and unreasonably stating that the evidence was there.
Frater wants Justice Paul Favell, who is Cree, to quash it entirely or send it back to a new tribunal. But the AFN's lawyers blasted Frater's arguments, calling them callous and heartless.
Canada has engaged in a campaign of obstruction, delay, deflection, and non-compliance in the legal proceedings, alongside ongoing and knowing discriminatory conduct in its operations and utterly inconsistent political messaging to the Canadian and the First Nations public.
Both the Caring Society and AFN say the order was reasonable and ought to stand or be remitted to the same panel. Canada is scheduled to explain why Favell should quash a different order broadening Jordan's principle on Thursday and Friday. Brett Forster, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Thanks, Brett. Well, in honor of the many residential school survivors and their strong will to come forward, we have a special feature this week. Here's APTN's Tina House with the first in a series called Stories of Survival.
Louisa Celesta was just 5 years old when she, along with her 3 brothers and 2 sisters, were taken away to St. George's Residential School in Lytton, BC, from their home in Spence's Bridge, BC. And her first memory of that experience was traumatic.
They took us to the school. We ended up having to get the knit power put on our head right away because they didn't want us to spread knits, I guess. And I guess it was an emotional experience for me because my sister said I cried all the time. I think the first day I was there. And I guess she said I wasn't treated very well by the supervisors at the school.
Louisa says that from age 5 to 8 years old, there are certain things that she has blocked out of her memory. She believes it was because of the physical and mental abuse she suffered at the hands of supervisors at the Anglican Church.
I remember sometimes the teacher would hit us on the head with the yardstick, and she hit me on the head the one time, and I wouldn't stop crying.
She says the loneliness was the worst part, and after all these years, the abuse she suffered is still affecting her.
I miss so much of my community. I don't have no connection to my community, and I had very little connection with my family. During my teenage life, I ended up in foster care for 4 years after the residential school. I ended up in 4 foster homes. That was the most difficult times in my life. I started trying to cope with things, the pain at the residential school, by drinking. We used to sneak out, some of the girls and some of the boys, sneak into town and get people to buy us liquor, and that's how we coped.
Despite everything, Louisa graduated university in 1994 with a joint degree of sociology anthropology and has been sober for 40 years. She's now 72 years old, happily married with a beautiful family, and she's grateful she's here to tell her story. But it's taken years of counseling. Today, she, along with her husband, daughter, and granddaughter, are at the former Kamloops Indian Residential School to come and pay their respects to the 215 children found buried here, and she's thankful that she survived. Tina House, APTN National News, to Kamloops.
Important story to hear, and we'll have another part in our stories of survival for you on tomorrow's show. Meanwhile, the Ontario government is pledging $10 million in support to identify and commemorate residential school burial sites. The announcement came today from Indigenous leaders on Treaty 3 territory. Premier Doug Ford spoke virtually from Kenora. He says his government can't wait around for federal support. 12 burial sites are believed to be located across Ontario. Ogichida Francis Kavanagh said the discovery of the Kamloops burial site has widespread impact.
Not only survivors are impacted, it's all of First Nations people in Canada are impacted by this discovery. With that, miigwech again to the government for making this happen today. Miigwech.
Saskatoon has been working towards reconciliation and hopes changing the name of one of its streets will help the process. APTN's Priscilla Wolf explains.
Saskatoon Tribal Chief Mark Arcand has called for John A. Macdonald Road to be renamed. It's a residential street in the west side of the city. In response, City Councillor David Curtin is taking it to the Governance Committee.
I'll tell you what's going to happen first. I am going to be presenting a motion calling for the name to change from that road to the Governance and Priorities Committee, which is a committee that includes all members of City Council.
He says it will be happening very soon.
It's National Indigenous Peoples Day. From there, if passed, and I do quite frankly expect it to pass, City Council will then deal with it about a week later.
Chief Mark Arcand believes it's a positive step towards reconciliation.
John A. Macdonald was instrumental in creating the residential schools back in the day, and when that was created, it was to take the Indian out of the Indian.
He says for the survivors and descendants of survivors who use that road daily, it can be a trigger.
At the end of the day, the word John A. Macdonald triggers a lot of our Indigenous people by the creation of residential schools.
Councillor Curtin, who himself is Metis, says his dad was a residential school survivor and agrees with Chief Arcand that the name of that road can trigger survivors and their descendants.
There are so many Indigenous families that have to cross that road to go to school every day, or even just to go home, even on off school days and the like, and they have to cross that road and see that name.
Chief Arcand and Councillor Curtin say that the new name will be decided by a committee in the future, likely to include elders and survivors. Priscilla Wolf, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
Time now for a quick break, but still to come, why the Métis Nation of Alberta is taking the province to court. Stay with us. Welcome back to the East Coast now, and Mi'kmaq fishermen who's the son of the late Donald Marshall Jr., and who fought for the treaty right to harvest lobster last fall in southwestern Nova Scotia, is now facing charges of making and possessing child pornography. 36-year-old Randall Colby Sack of Sabaganagity First Nation is facing charges of sexual interference, invitation to sexual touching, making, publishing, and possession of child pornography. The charges stem from a June 9th, 2021 offense. Sack's bail hearing is June 17th at Sabaganagity Provincial Court. The Metis Nation of Alberta have sued the government of Alberta for failing to create a Metis consultation policy and not negotiating with the organization. APTN's Chris Stewart brings us the details.
In a press conference Monday at the provincial NDP headquarters, Métis Nation of Alberta claimed that the Alberta United Conservative Government cancelled negotiations early in their mandate. Negotiations that had been ongoing for years with two previous governments to develop a Métis consultation policy to give the MNA a voice in government decisions, like environment, climate, health, housing, and more. Audrey Portra says the Métis Nation of Alberta are not consulted on any issues that affect them.
Alberta deliberates endlessly on whether to consult with Métis communities using a case-by-case approach that is tangled in red tape and that Alberta's own bureaucrats have admitted does not work. This is systemic racism in action.
Former Premier and current NDP leader Rachel Notley says that the government is not even returning phone calls from the MNA.
The Minister of Indigenous Relations has completely abdicated his role and responsibility. And at the same time, his boss, the Premier, has pledged to build a new relationship with Indigenous people. Well, it would appear that in some instances, anyway, at least there's no relationship at all.
As a result, the MNA has filed a lawsuit stating Indigenous Relations Minister Rick Wilson breached his duty to consult. Later in the week, the MNA will ask the courts to bring the province back to negotiate a consultation policy.
We tried to negotiate a solution. We poured time, money, energy, and most importantly, trust into these negotiations. Yet, with the stroke of a pen, the minister left us empty-handed.
Indigenous Relations Minister Rick Wilson's office says he is too busy to comment, but in a statement told APTN that they have supported the MNA by enacting affordable housing projects, support for Métis Crossing, and pandemic support. In the legislature, Premier Kenney defended the government's position.
There have been ongoing consultations on a broad range of issues, funding arrangements. The most recent concrete example of cooperation was our work with them collaborating on outreach clinics for vaccines.
Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
And now to Nunavut, where we're joined by Kent Driscoll. A COVID-19 outbreak at a Nunavut mine has led to positive COVID-19 cases all over Canada. Not in Nunavut, though. Kent, how'd that happen?
Thanks. And how did that happen? A serious amount of social distancing went into keeping the virus from entering Nunavut. The Baffinland iron ore mine is located in between Arctic Bay and Pond Inlet on North Baffin Island. You might remember them from earlier this year, when Inuit activists took over the runway and the road, temporarily shutting down the mine. Now, since March of last year, no one working at the mines has had contact with anyone living in a Nunavut community. You fly directly to the mine site and then directly home. Nunavut-based employees are staying at home and receiving 75% of their usual salary. Now in May, positive cases of COVID-19 were detected at the mine and were widespread enough that they sent home almost all of their staff. And the problem is many had already contracted COVID-19 at the mine site. It turns out there were 106 cases at the mine alone. But that's just the beginning. Baffinland's 1,200 employees spread out throughout the country. Now there's 127 linked cases in Ontario, 120 in Alberta, and connected cases showing up in Newfoundland, Saskatchewan, and New Brunswick. But none in Nunavut communities. Dr. Michael Patterson is Nunavut's Chief Public Health Officer. According to him, things are much better now at the actual mine site.
Yeah, right now, what's happening at Mary River, there's no COVID on site. There's been no active COVID on site since June 5th, and the last diagnosis of COVID, the last time that transmission was confirmed to happen on site was May 29th.
This Baffinland outbreak is happening just as the government of Nunavut is considering easing restrictions on Nunavut's mines. Agnico Eagle operates 2 mines in Nunavut's central Kivalik region. This is the entrance to the Meliadine gold mine near Rankin Inlet. It's a huge economic driver for the region. In 2019, they spent over $33 million on Inuit salaries, staff wages. They're working with the government of Nunavut to slowly start bringing back their Inuit workforce. So while the current Baffinland outbreak hasn't directly affected Nunavut residents, the closure of the mines sure has. That Inuit workforce has been sitting at home since March, getting only 75% of their regular wages. They're eager to get back to work, and now the government and the mines have to figure out how to do that while keeping everyone else safe. Back to you in Winnipeg.
Thanks, Kent. Time now for one more quick break. Coming up, a story of a one-of-a-kind mural and a one-of-a-kind coach. Stick around. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. And if you don't know what to do for dinner, Jared Bourne submitted this photo of what appears to be an Indian taco, and it looks pretty delicious. You can hear the studio crew's stomachs grumbling, and my own. Thanks for that, Jared. Keep those photos coming by sending your photo to share@aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the east coast, 22 with showers for Halifax, 16 and rain in St. John's, 7 for Kuujjuaq and Inukjuak, 23 under sunny skies in Montreal, showers, and 14 in Chibougamau, 22 in Sault Ste. Marie, 20 for North Bay, 23 in Thunder Bay, sunny, and 27 for Sioux Lookout, 19 with rain in Churchill, 30 with showers for God's Lake, 32 in Winnipeg, Gimli, and Brandon. 26 under sunny skies in Regina, 25 with showers for Saskatoon, 24 and rain in Meadow Lake, 21 for Buffalo Narrows. In northern Alberta, 21 in Fort McMurray, 14 with showers in Grand Prairie. 21 for Edmonton, 23 with rain in Lethbridge. 20 and showers for Vancouver and Victoria, 26 in Kamloops. 18 in Prince George, cloudy, and 16 for Dease Lake. 26 in Old Crow, 17 with showers in Whitehorse. 13 and rain in Yellowknife, 22 in Norman Wells. 9 in Sax Harbor, 24 in Inuvik. 10 with rain in Arviat, plus 2 in Cambridge Bay. 4 with a chance of snow in Resolute, 7 in Igloolik. Graduating high school in a pandemic isn't easy, but some Northern Ontario First Nation grads haven't let COVID get in their way. Michelle Carlinzig has more.
Raylene Metis has come a long way from getting kicked out of her Thunder Bay High School over a decade ago.
Reason why I was getting kicked out of those Dennis Franklin is because I was drinking too much, not attending most of my classes.
While the 32-year-old struggled as a teen, she reached a personal milestone this year, getting her high school diploma.
It feels great, actually. Like being a single mother of 3 daughters, like I managed to work with my assignments, get them on time, and just basically get myself to this point.
Metis attended Kiiwetinoong Internet High School, a virtual education center, all from her house in Red Lake, Ontario. KIHS is based out of Thunder Bay and services 15 First Nation communities in northwestern Ontario. Metis credits her success to her grad coach, Nikki Osborne, who worked closely with Metis to ensure she graduated. Osborne says the 3-year-old coaching program has made a huge impact.
I think that it helps them to have that extra person to cheer them on, to let them know, remind them that we believe in them.
34 people graduated from KIHS this year, a record high. Osborne says the support staff played a role, but the students carried the work.
Just the determination that nothing was going to get in these students' way of graduating. Many of our students are parents. Many of our students work, and so they have a lot on their plates.
Mika says she made it through for her 3 daughters and hopes to go to college for accounting. Michelle Carlenzig, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
A big congrats to Raylene and all the grads out there this year. It's long been said art can be therapeutic, and that's why Carleton University and a mobile health service in the Yukon teamed up last week to promote mental wellness by having a group of high schoolers spray paint a one-of-a-kind mural. APTN Sarah Connors gives us the details.
Don't be fooled. This eye-catching mural on the back of the local grocery store in Mayo isn't graffiti. These are actually spray-painted self-portraits created by high schoolers at J.V. Clark School. This is 9th grader Connor Bernhardt's portrait. He says he had fun spending a week working on the project along with his peers.
We did a lot of hard work to get it completed, and it looks like it went pretty well.
This mural here? Yeah, I painted the second one.
Irene Melanson says the project brought a touch of color to Mayo.
It makes the community more colorful and not just plain buildings.
The portraits are part of an initiative to encourage students' mental wellness outside of a clinical setting. It was sparked by grad students at Carleton University, which has a memorandum of understanding with Nacho-Nayakdun First Nation in Mayo to collaborate on Indigenous-led projects. Cheyenne Gordon spray-painted this self-portrait. She says working outside the classroom helped relieve stress.
Art, for some reason, seems to calm me after something may have happened or an argument.
Because COVID prevented the grad students from delivering the project, it was overseen by the Yukon First Nations Education Directorate's Mobile Therapy Unit, or MTU. The MTU is a health service for children in rural communities which launched late last year. It's composed of a mental wellness team and offers free services to children like occupational therapy and eye examinations.
It's been great this week to be outside. And
occupational therapist Patrice Cameron says the MTU helps bridge the gap in underserviced rural Yukon communities.
A lot of our students, come up against systemic barriers that make learning more difficult. So one of the vision of the Yukon First Nation Education Directorate is to improve the academic outcomes of our Indigenous students.
Members of the MTU are visiting rural communities like Mayo and hosting projects like these self-portraits as a way to build relationships with their children. Cameron says creative projects like these outside of the classroom are not only beautification, but therapeutic.
I think bringing these sorts of projects and programs to the community allows our students to have successful learning opportunities.
The students agree.
It's just more me to be out here outside, socializing and doing art.
Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Mayo.
Great work. Spray painting seems like a pretty cool class. That's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Tuesday. For news anytime, visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for tuning in. We leave you tonight with some of the sights and sounds of the planting of the Indigenous garden outside of APTN World Headquarters. The garden includes cedars and sweetgrass and other plants significant. Have a great night.